I will call the city council meeting to order. It is 4:47. Roll call, please.
Swisher,
Yes.
Fetch, Feltus,
Yeah.
Wojni, Mazak,
Yes.
Olsted.
Yes.
We have a quorum. Pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a 13-item agenda, verification of posting.
The agenda was posted at City Hall, State Bank of Arcadia, and Arcadia TV and Appliance, and the city website by September 2nd.
Thank you. We have a 13-item agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve. By Slusher. Second by Feltus. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk will call the roll.
Fetch, Feltus,
Yes.
Wojni, Mazak,
Yes.
Olsted.
Yes.
Swisher.
Yes. Motion carries. Public comment? Public comment? Public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. Presentations, we have none this evening. Old business, approval of meeting minutes from August 21st, 2017.
Second.
Motion by Feltus, second by Mazak. Any questions and or changes?
Yes,
Yep.
under the discussion action item, but if I understood correctly, the committee is willing to get donors for recycling containers and waste in the parks, and then handing that money over to the city. And the way it's written here, it says the committee is requesting the city to consider, they are also requesting the city to consider recycling containers and other recycling efforts in the 2018 budget. So actually, the committee is hoping to get 70 donors to raise $14,000. I thought that was made
Yep.
clear at the meeting.
Okay, we can add that in. Do you have that note, Lindy?
Mm-hmm.
Any other, thanks Marlon. Any other changes? Hearing none, clerk will call the roll.
Feltus,
Yes.
Wojni, Mazak,
Yes.
Olsted.
Yes.
Slusher,
Yes.
Fetch.
Motion carries. Item 4B, approval of meeting minutes from August 28th, 2017.
So moved.
Motion by Slusher, is there a second?
Second.
By Feltus, sorry. Joe? Is there any changes? Hearing none, clerk will call the roll.
Mazak,
Yes.
Olsted,
Abstain.
Slusher,
Yes.
Fetch, Feltus.
Yeah.
Motion carries. Item 4C, we can bring that back later since most of these people are in regards to one issue. We'll move it along to keep them on their time schedule. Board and commission updates, we have none this evening. Department updates, none this evening. Public hearing we'll come back to as well. We'll go to number 8A, discussion of possible action on alternative plan for Oak Street. This is something that was discussed at last week's meeting, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, meeting. After the meeting, some more information was brought forth, so we brought it back. Mike, you want to take the floor?
Sure. First of all, I'd like
You
to
want
hand out
introduce
copies of
yourself,
some.
Mike? Just,
Pardon me?
you want to introduce yourself so everybody
Okay,
knows?
I'm Mike Davey with Davey Engineering Company, and we were at the last meeting to talk about some options on reconstructing Oak Street. Obviously, everybody knows that a section of the street washed out just north of the bridge in that last flood. And the question is how to repair that in the most cost-effective manner and try to improve things at the same time within our budget limitations. So, first thing I'm going to hand out is just a copy of the same thing that we had last time, and which are the options that we discussed. So, see that everybody's got that, and I don't have a lot of extra ones, but.
Mike, I can leave copies.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, I got it.
Mike?
Perfect. Oh, sorry. And the other thing I'm gonna hand out is a copy of the same image of the project that we talked about selecting, which is that option one, which is essentially repairing the road and putting it back close to where it is right now. And this is a cross-section view and also shows the bridge. I mean, just quickly to kind of put this in perspective, the upper part is the plan view, of course, and then the bottom is what the section looks like. The blue boxed area over on the side is the Oak Street Bridge, and the blue area is where the water goes through. And then if you see on the street section where the blue area is, that is where the flood went over the road and where it would continue to go over the road. So you can get an idea about how much water goes underneath the bridge and then how much of it goes over at the top of the road. So what we wanted to talk about now is a couple of additional options for the bridge that would involve trying to get some of the water to go underneath the bridge, underneath the road, so that we can help that problem to a certain extent. And I'll pass out a copy of that. So these are options 5 and 6. You got 1 through 4 on that first sheet. So. Pass it down there, Mike. And the next sheet I'm going to hand out is the image showing what that culvert option would look like. Okay, so what this option is showing is essentially going underneath the road and putting in a series of culverts. And what we're showing on here is the same configuration that was suggested after the last meeting, was putting in some 60-inch HDPE pipe, and then also utilizing the 42-inch pipe that you have on hand. You've got enough 42-inch pipe to put one leg across at this length, and then we'd have 4 barrels of the 60-inch pipe. That gives you an idea what it looks like to be able to put that in there. So we did do some evaluation of that option then to see how that would work. Which is on that first handout I gave you. So take a look at that sheet that's called Additional Oak Street Reconstruction Options. So option number 5, which is with the culverts like this, involves reconstructing Oak Street to about the same grade and profile, which is the surface at the top of the street, and adding a row of culverts underneath the road. Would regrade the area where the water gets to the channel and the outlet channel so that there is a place for the water to go through the culvert, because this is going to be at a lot lower elevation, so water is going to go through that route much more frequently than it does now. Right now, of course, with the road up this way, the water doesn't go through that route very often, but if we make it 8 feet deeper than it is right now, there's going to be water taking that route every 3 to 4 years, not once every 100 years. So it is going to be a lot more common to have road go that direction. In order to do that and create that flow channel, you would need to get easements from the 3 property owners. What that would amount to is, out of the flow that we've got coming through there, we could get 860 cubic feet per second over the road, but we still have 1,470 feet going over the road. In other words, even with the culverts in there, we still have at least 2/3 of the flow that has to get over the top of the road. So it doesn't do much on the upstream side of the bridge. But it does have a benefit because with the road being able to get through the culverts and the bridge at the same time, the frequency when it goes over the road is reduced. And looking at the calculations and working with the Corps, essentially what it amounts to is that if we don't have the culvert, the road would overtop in a 6% event, which is like a 15-year event. So we don't really talk about the years very much anymore. Nothing seems to work that way. But in a 6% event, at any year, you have a 6% chance of a flood occurring that would go over the road. If we put the culverts in, it's reduced to a 3% event. That's when it would have value. In the big flood, the 100-year event, you can't even tell the culverts are there. It's going to go over the road in the same manner that it does right now. But in that period of between the 15 and the 30-year event, the road would have a place to go and would not go over the road. We prepared some cost estimates of the cost to be able to rebuild the road that direction. And with the 60-inch culverts, when we put those underneath the road, they got to be spaced at least 2.5 feet apart so you can compact underneath them, especially with a plastic pipe because it gets all of its support by the bedding around the bottom half of the barrel of the pipe. So they got to be separated by 2.5 feet. So you have a row of 60-inch culvert, 2.5 feet space, 60-inch culvert, and continue down that way. Once we get those culverts in there, we need to get a way to control the flow to get them to the culverts and also stop the water from trying to go between the culverts. So there's got to be a head wall, a poured head wall at the upper end and a poured head wall on the downstream side to be able to get this all to work. We estimate to add these culverts would cost about $325,000 for the project. That's the basic construction project. And that's compared to the $250,000 for the basic project. So there would be a $75,000 increase in order to be able to put the culverts in. A better way to do this from a hydraulic perspective and a maintenance perspective is to use box culverts. And so we did cost out the idea of getting an equivalent area by using box culverts. It would take up a little bit area, it would be a little bit easier to maintain, but it would cost quite a bit more. For the box culverts, the estimated cost goes up to $367,000. So adding the culverts has a cost associated with it, at least $75,000. But one of the most important factors is what's outlined on the bottom of the sheet. If we put the culverts in, we need to lower the utilities that are in there. That includes the water main that needs to be lowered. There's a 4-inch water main in there. We estimate it costs $15,000 to lower that. There's electric lines that need to be lowered, and the utility estimated that cost at $25,000, and the gas main needs to be lowered. And they say the only way they can lower the gas main is to drill it in from starting on the other side of the bridge and going all the way across. And so that estimated cost is $60,000. So to put the culverts in and to get the utilities out of the way is estimated to cost $100,000 to be able to do that. That's the biggest part of this cost, is trying to get the utilities in place.
Yeah, but the gas line's not our cost.
If you put in a new facility and that requires relocation of the gas main, then it's your cost. If you're just, right now, the cost to repair the gas main is their cost. But if you go in and you change the street and require them to lower the gas main,
Even though they're in our easement?
well, look at it this way, is you got 3 utilities to deal with. Water, electric, and gas. You either pay for all of them or none of them. That'd kind of be your choice. A couple other things to think about associated with this. Let me hand out this. It's a little bit hard to decipher, but it's really interesting and helps put things in perspective a little bit. Let me explain a little bit about what this is. It's colorful, but what this really shows you is that the flood that occurred was Turton Creek. It was not the Trempealeau River. And the Trempealeau River, or the railroad bridge and the stuff downstream, did not have a lot to do with what happened here. This was a Turton Creek flood, and that's why Oak Street washed out. The black line is the top of the levee along Turton Creek. Now, ideally, that levee would be a flat line, and it would be parallel to what the water level is, but it's not. The Turton Creek levee obviously is well high for a segment, and then you can see the difference in the grade as you get closer up by Oak Street, and you can see where the flood went over the levee, right as it came over Oak Street. But you can see what Oak Street does to the flood level, and that there is that big drop as it comes over the bridge and over Oak Street. And then it drops, it actually went over the levee, but then as it drops back down, the water level jumps back up again because the water's going so fast at a high velocity. That's called what's called a hydraulic jump. So the water's going so fast, it's like white water in a river. And it has to get rid of the energy, so it jumps up in the air by almost 4 feet as it gets downstream from the bridge. So we get down from the bridge, it's smooth for a little section, it gets just past where the first house is, and then that red area is where you got that jump. The water jumps back up higher again. And that's one of the areas where we're always gonna have to worry about coming over the levee. What all these lines say is that the levee just downstream from the bridge is not high enough for a 20-year event. So in a lot smaller flood than this on Turton Creek, it's gonna come over the levee just downstream of the bridge. Putting the culverts in won't make any difference. It'll still go over the levee. I mean, the water is not gonna, not gonna make a difference. The same volume of water is on the downstream side of Oak Street. So it's not gonna help that. The major benefit in putting the culverts in is to keep the road drier longer. It's not gonna solve the flooding problem on Turton Creek. It's not gonna make it any worse, but it's not gonna solve the flooding problem. The best way to try to do something short-term to help the flood Turton Creek levee is to try to raise that levee downstream to the bridge even a small amount. The city did propose raising Turton Creek levee back after the 2010 flood and applied for permits to do it, and essentially got stymied because the requirement was you couldn't move any further north. You could only raise the levee by moving to the south, and there's no place to go to the south. One thing that we can do, since you need to do a riprap patch job, when you're out patching a riprap, we can raise that levee a small amount and help with this thing, especially in that first segment downstream. In a lot of these other areas you don't need to deal with, but when Turton Creek floods, the problem is right downstream from the bridge. Now, when the Trempealeau River floods, it's a different ballgame, and you get a lot more water downstream. But this is what happened in this last flood, is a Turton Creek flood, so it's a little bit different ballgame. So what are your options? I mean, we got to spend a lot of money to fix Oak Street, and certainly you'd like to try to make it better if you could. The suggestion the first time is try to put it back close to where it was, because that's the lowest cost option. Try to avoid any expense of relocating utilities, but armor that section of road so that when the water goes over again, it doesn't wash out the street. You're still going to have a hazardous condition because you're going to have water that's going to be 1.5 to 2 feet deep going over that street. Somebody coming through there at night and doesn't know that there's a flood isn't going to know what's happening, and so it's a dangerous situation to have to begin with, and you're not going to make it better. What the option one project does is essentially get us back close to where you were with an armored section of roadway so it doesn't wash out. If we try to do something with the culverts, we can help a little bit. It'll go over the road less often. The major disadvantage is the cost of the utility relocation and the extra cost to put the culverts in. But
And a 50% cost share.
And we need to check into that, but the way I understand, the program we're applying for would pay 75% of the cost for reconstruction, 50% of the cost of improvements. The culverts would be improvements. But where that break point would be debatable. So those are the numbers, and all I can give you is the numbers and what it means for water levels and flood, but there's a lot of other factors that go into a decision on what to do with this than just the numbers too.
So you're telling me these tubes can only be put at 1% slope?
You know, here's a, the slope doesn't really do us any good.
Well, the more slope, the more volume you get
Yeah,
through the
but
tubes.
here's the problem is that, the downstream side submerged, when this type of event happens. So when the water comes over the road, which it'll do in a high water event, then the downstream side of, those culverts is underwater. So the slope doesn't make any difference anymore. What makes a difference is the difference in the water level on the upstream side and the downstream side. And I can have any slope on a culvert and it doesn't convey any more water because the downstream is then underwater. That's what we call an outlet control. So with the outlet underwater, it doesn't do me any good. So as long as there's a deep water on the downstream side, I can't get more water under by putting more slope on the culverts. It's all water being pushed through by the head difference between the upstream and downstream side. So that's where the flow calculations come from. Now in the model that we're running with a core, it takes a lot of other factors in there, but it does calculate the impact of the fact that it's underwater in the downstream side.
We put culverts in and they get blocked from debris. We all know debris comes downstream.
Yeah.
What
It won't be,
happens then?
it won't be any worse than it would be right now. It won't be any worse. Yeah.
How do you say that if one of the culverts gets
It'll
blocked?
still go,
and
it's gonna go over the road anyway.
But I mean, it's gonna.
Gonna go over the road anyway.
Less is gonna go into the culverts.
Yeah, exactly. What it amounts to is that it wouldn't be any worse than if you didn't put it in. Okay. And in a 30-year flood, the road's gonna go over the road if you put the culverts in or not. So if you get plugged, it's gonna go over the road anyway. I mean, it's still gonna go over the road. You can't get it, well, you know, you think about it, take a look at the size of the blue area underneath the bridge, you know? And that's 3,000 CFS in that blue area, okay? Now take a look at the blue area we got in the culverts and going over the road. I mean, it's nowhere close to being that size, so you can understand, we're not putting that much water that direction. The volume of water is directly related to that area. So I got that huge space underneath the bridge. With the culverts, I'm not making much of a dent in how much water I can put through there. You know, as we started out when we talked last time, the real end, what you really need is a bridge, another bridge with that much space. That's the ultimate answer for Oak Street. You just have a bridge just twice as big as that, and now you get all the water through.
Mike, you have one colored one?
Mike, can you explain more about the modeling, the course modeling, and what, you know, in layman's term, I guess, what's all included in that modeling, and what, I mean, what's the difference between that and taking, say, the specs of a structure?
Okay, so this is one of the things that's produced by the model, but what the Corps can do with the model, it's called a HEC-RAS model, and it's named after the hydraulics lab of the Corps, and it's a model that we use all the time. The advantage that we've got with what the Corps has done is they've got all the Trempealeau River modeled already, and so that with the survey work that they've done, they can manipulate things in a hurry and basically say is that, well, if Turton Creek comes up first, or the Trempealeau River comes up first, how does that all interrelated on all this? And they can also do the calculations based on summer, when you got a lot of high weed growth slowing down the water, or winter when you don't have that. So they can run this in a lot of different ways, and they ran it in a lot of different ways to be able to do this. So really, the Corps' study is all downstream of Oak Street. And it was only until after this event that they came in and did a lot more modeling of what happens on Oak Street. So we got a lot fuller picture of what happens now than we did before. But essentially it's a computer model that simulates what the water's going to do and tells us what all these elevations are.
So much like a week and a half ago, the same questions come up. No matter what, we don't want to flood the city of Arcadia. No matter what option is chosen, doesn't do that.
Not, the only way you could, if you wanted to do, the only thing you could do right now to prevent Oak Street from being a flood hazard is to take the street out. Okay? You know, you can't afford to build a bridge, take the street out. 350 feet of street, you remove it all together, and you won't have a flood anymore.
That's not an option.
No, I mean, you have no other way to get there.
Right, Dennis?
Yeah. We talked a little bit about last time about lowering the street, the section in there. The problem is that if we want to lower it enough to get the Turkey Creek levee to work, we got to put it pretty low, and then the water's going to come over it often. So it isn't like, you know, now, for example, 2010 and 2017. You had water over the road, you couldn't get there. If we lower that road, you're gonna, once a year, you can't drive through there, or more often.
And then if the creek takes that path more often, it becomes an issue with the DNR as far as.
Well, you just created a new stream bed. And you know, maybe that's where, when you think about it, maybe that's where the creek really wants to go too. So if we put the culverts in, you will have flow that direction often. It needs to be ready to be a stream, and the water is gonna come there. I mean, picture right now, I mean, with the culverts in there that are 5 feet in diameter and they've got 2 feet of cover, that means the water surface in the creek is 7 foot below the top of the road. So the water's gonna come that way often.
Why would you need 2 feet of cover if you put concrete over the top?
For the HDPE pipe, the plastic pipe, in particular, you have to have minimum 2 foot of cover underneath the street. The plastic pipe gets its strength from the soil around it and the soil on top of it. If you had concrete pipe, you could shorten that up, but even with concrete pipe, well, here could be the issue. If you're hauling dump trucks of dirt over that road on a regular basis, you need 2 foot of cover. If you're never gonna have any heavy trucks go that direction, you can do 1 foot of cover. I only thought about that since 3 trucks went by me this afternoon when I was parked down there, so.
That's a heavy truck road.
Remind me when
The box cover would be a little bit easier because then now I can just have 2 foot of cover and I can make it wider.
could you remind me when the Army Corps of Engineers are going to complete the study?
This winter is when
Okay.
they're gonna present their options.
Options, okay.
The study itself isn't completed until late 2018, early 2019.
Okay.
But at least we'll know what the options are sometime this winter. And they've got a lot of things that they're discussing, but they're not ready to say, well, these are lists right now.
Yeah. It'd be nice if we knew what they wanted for this area.
Well, and that's really what we talked about last time too. I know Marla didn't happen to be here, but you know, that was the question, is if, you know, we can go with option 6 and spend a lot more money and it gets tore out, do we look like fools? Like Adam said, or do we look like fools?
Buffoons was the word.
Buffoons, sorry. Doing it the same way and armoring it,
Right.
and
And
doing it
then-
at a lower cost to the city, not knowing, you know, what the Corps is gonna do.
What's the timeline on either option?
That's another factor to consider here is that,
Soon.
if we put the road back about where it is, we can get it done yet this fall, okay? If we're gonna put the culverts in, you gotta lower that gas main, that's gotta get done first before you can do anything else. And it's very, you know, you wouldn't do this till next year. You wouldn't have time to do it before winter. If you had to relocate the utilities, put the culverts in, and rebuild it, that's not gonna happen yet this year. It'd be next year.
Well, that, you know, brings up the next issue, which we discussed, is we can't wait that long. And we don't know what's gonna happen in the spring or yet this fall. And the sooner it can be done, the better, in my opinion.
Well, and you know, I understand. I mean, what everybody's thinking about here is, yeah, we put this back the way it is, and then we get another flood, and now we just, you know, what did we do? We just made it worse, right? Well, that's true. There is gonna be a risk. All we can do when we do this is keep in mind, number one, we wanna keep it close to where it is, so you don't have to relocate the utility. It doesn't mean we can't widen it and make it a little bit better like we had in option 3 before, and 4, and widen and make it a little bit more road over there, water over the road. And then the other thing is to see if we can't get something done on that dike just downstream of the bridge and get that in a little bit better shape. And that you could do if you get the funding for that riprap, to patch up the riprap in there, well, that's the opportunity to try to get a little bit more on that dike and help out a little bit. For now, that's about the best you can do. And maybe about winter or next summer, we'll have some better idea what's happening with the core and know if we made the right decision or not then.
Isn't there any way you can make an easement and come in behind there to those houses? You know, buy an easement from some farmer and put a gravel road in there for now?
Well, we gotta get across the river somewhere or the other, and,
Right.
you know, let's put it this way, is that, if you take a look at, Turton Creek and where Oak Street is, and the bridge not being big enough, would it make more sense to have that bridge upstream? If you're if you actually had the money to put another bridge in, rather than do it at Oak Street, would you be better off going upstream on Turton Creek where it's narrower and, putting in a bridge that doesn't, block the flow and get over the north side of the river there? You know, I guess the other thing to think about is that that north part of Arcadia is a great piece of land for potential development. You don't want to isolate it either. It'd really be nice if you had a better connection across Turton Creek than you have, rather than a worse one.
Maybe at this point, we don't have $1 million to put another bridge in.
Right.
But why does there have to be a bridge? What I'm saying is going from 93,
Oh,
you know,
Yeah.
come in that land there, connect down.
Can be done. I actually think that exists on paper in a few places.
probably well before my time, I
Yeah.
think it's existed.
Right.
Dennis or Donna, do you guys have questions? This directly affects.
I would just like it done. I'm sick of looking at it.
The only questions we had, I asked Mike, was on that first option about putting riprap along. And one part he said it could be covered with ground so we could mow it, and along the road it couldn't be, but our concern is how do you maintain them darn big rocks with the weeds growing up?
Right, because you want your yard to look nice.
Yes, definitely.
You know, but that was the only thing that,
And what we do is that where the
He kinda
driveway,
explained
yeah, the
it.
driveway is along there, we need rock riprap when you get by the street, because that's where that big scour hole is gonna be. We need rock riprap there, but what we can do along the driveway is cover that all with dirt, and you can actually maintain it. Now, it's all gonna go in a flood, but you'll see dirt with rock underneath it. And as we get further along the driveway, we put some mat down for armoring underneath it. Along the road itself, I'd rather just leave it riprap and not try to put dirt on top of that, because there's not gonna be anybody to mow it along there easily. And, you know, there'll be a geotextile fabric under there that'll keep the weeds from growing for a couple of years until some dirt fills it in, and then the weeds will grow. And Roundup's the easiest answer.
Roundup?
Mike, you had a question?
Well, I guess a question or a comment, wouldn't a combination, if the idea is to protect from the overtopping of the dike, to protect lower Arcadia, a combination of, you know, raising the dike a modest amount in the area, which you said you've already gotten some form of approval to do that, and then a modest lowering of Oak Street in that area, wouldn't the combination of the two have prevented the overtopping of the dike in that area?
It'll get close.
It looks
keep
like
in
you
mind- yeah.
could. And then the third question was, once you get underneath the bridge, it's between the bridge and whatever that distance is, number of feet, that was really the problem area where the overtopping of the dike took place. It appears on the northern side of the creek that the upper elevation of the bank itself kind of encroaches into that profile. And even if there was just a straightening of it, what effect would that have on that the velocity and some of the modeling that you're seeing in that area.
Let me cover that in
Hey.
just a couple things. First of all, based on the course calculation, they call the July event a 200-year event, by the way, not a 100-year event. And so everything I'm talking about is a 100-year event, because we're just gonna throw that one out the window. It was bigger than everything else we're talking about. Number one, yeah, we need to lower the road a little bit and widen out that space without getting it much deeper than the 1.8 feet and not interfering with the utility. Yes, that's what we wanna do. Yes, we wanna raise the dike a small amount downstream from Oak Street unofficially. Okay? And you're right, that velocity jump right there is caused by this stream channel being narrow on, coming downstream from the Oak Street side. So any widening of that channel, and actually the message from the Corps was is absolutely don't do anything to narrow that channel. Anything we could do, if we widen that out a little bit when we did the repair work, that would help. The question's gonna be is that, part of that area along Oak Street riprap was patched back in 2010, after that flood. And give you an idea how things work, just put everything in perspective, because we always talk about the money we're gonna get, right? After that last flood, the city got FEMA funding to help patch up the riprap here of $6,500. It cost $65,000 to put the riprap in, so great funding, right? So anyway, we did that, but we only had enough money to do on the north side of the bank, and on the south bank, it actually made it through that last flood pretty good. You know, the rock didn't come out. We put a little bit of rock back in, but now you got that whole south bank to work on to be able to try to fix it. And what we talked about before is if you get the FEMA money to come in and patch that riprap along there. What's the ultimate fate of that levee? Is it gonna stay there forever? The Corps tells us that if that levee stays there, it's gotta be 4 feet higher for the ultimate flood. Well, so anything we put on here isn't gonna be there later anyway. So we wanna come in and patch that, and if we get enough money with the FEMA money, then we go on the north bank and widen that out a little bit. We're waiting to see if there's gonna be any FEMA money or not. And like Rob said, after the news over the last couple of weeks, all of a sudden, the odds of getting funding from FEMA don't sound too good anymore.
What about sheet piling?
Yeah, is one of the things that Corps is looking at is sheet piling or a wall along that area. That's one of the things that they are talking about, not only here, but in a lot of different places. That's the only thing you have room for right there. But that can be done. We don't know what that's gonna be yet.
Question, I guess, or comment regarding the utilities. The utilities have to be redone. They can't be left in the current condition. They can't just be filled in with where they are currently.
If we leave the road where it is, then the utilities stay where they are. If we put the culverts in, now I gotta
Can they compact them suitably the way they're hanging out in the breeze?
The gas main needs to be relayed, okay? But they can relay it by digging it right now.
So that
Okay,
has to
so
happen no matter what.
if they have to relay it anyway, and the reason for that is an act of God, you know,
Right.
shouldn't that obligation be done by them? And I feel that they can't say, well, we wanna relay it up in here where the soil is gone, because you may not replace that soil. They're obligated to relay it with whatever the condition is post-storm event.
Here's we haven't gotten that far with the gas company yet, but here's kind of the idea. With the culverts or significant lowering of the road, they'd have to drill in the gas main to be able to do it. It'd be too deep. So then they would come in and they would drill from one end to the other, and that's where the $60,000 came from. If we put the road back where it is, the message we gave them is that it's up to you to put the gas main back just like you had it the first time. You dig and lay it just like you did before and put it back where it is. They don't have to drill it in. They can cut it up and relay it, or they can put new pipe in, whatever they want to do, but they just dig and lay it with the 18 to 24 inches cover they got right now. Now, what we've told them now is that we're going to put the street back where it is. You guys fix your own gas main, and it's your problem. That's what the message is to them right now.
Mike asked one of my questions, in sort of a different way, but, so the question he had asked is all the utility work, done, and you said yes, except for the gas main, correct? And then is that a,
Well, the $100,000 is water, gas, and electric. There's no sanitary sewer out here, by the way.
right, so you're looking at about 60 for the gas
Yeah.
main, right? So would the city be able to lobby for that to be lowered at their cost? I'm sure there's precedent where that's happened in the past based
Well,
on
Yeah,
circumstances
I
such as
understand.
these.
Here's my thought. If we're gonna, number one, if we have to relocate the utilities to make an improvement, that's part of our construction costs, it's eligible for the funding, including relocated utilities. Okay? So if we have to lower the gas main in order to put the culverts in, 50% of the cost is paid for. The other factor is that you got 3 utilities to deal with, water, electric, and the gas. You really gotta treat them all the same way. If you're gonna say, we're gonna pay for water and electric and not gonna pay for gas, yeah,
I actually agree with that, Mike, I think they should pay for all of them, but let's just say that the city's left with what? 25 plus 35, so you got $40,000 for utility, which I would say they'd have a pretty good request of the utility companies to pay for quite a bit of that, plus she gets
Yeah.
made from.
kind of like a rule of thumb is
Right.
that utilities are in the road right away by permission. And the major purpose of the road is streets, okay? So if we go in a job and, let's say the DOT comes through and they cut the grade of Main Street by 2 feet and your water main's too shallow, it's your problem to lower the water main. That's what they're telling you. You get out of our way. When we come in and put in culverts like that and really change the whole ballgame, now it's kind of debatable about what to do. If DOT came in and did a job and put a big culvert in here, they would pay to relocate utilities, they wouldn't make it.
Understood. I guess my question is, and I'll go back to this, is I like option 1 and option 7. And option 7 was presented to me by Mike Moran about lowering that road more significantly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's not
actually,
on
that's
here.
actually 4.
Is there an option 4?
Yeah, that's actually option
So
4.
lowering the road with the utilities?
Yeah, now, the question, here's gonna be the issue. Option 4 was lowering the road to the point where we had to do the utility. What we'd like to do is something between 3 and 4, so I guess the way to put it that way, is that we wanna lower the road a little bit, but not so much that utilities have to move.
Okay.
And that's exactly what was discussed a week and a half ago.
Up with the option 6 with the box culverts, do the utilities have to be moved for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's actually my favorite one.
Of course, it's the most expensive.
So option 4 does not require utilities to be moved,
Pardon me?
or does it? Option
4 does, 3 doesn't.
And if option 4 requires the utility cost move, that utility cost, move, the cost
That
of
would
the
be,
utility
that would
move
be an
is in
argument.
addition to that?
Exactly. Under that case scenario, we would basically say it's a utility expense to get out of our way because we're changing the street grade.
So the city could theoretically then make a call to utility companies to see what they'd be willing, find out what the funding is from the Fed.
One of the other issues is if you
or
do
from
lower
the- I'm
utilities,
sorry, from the state.
there's a timing issue. Because the gas company told us that if they had to come in and lower that significantly, it'd take them a long time to get the plans approved, hire a driller and get in there and do it, so. That time is a factor with the utility relocation.
I'm gonna make one more comment, and I know the city's thinking about this as they make this decision. There's a 2-3, we hope it's within 2 years to get that levy fixed. These 200-year events are a heck of a lot more common than they were even 20 years ago, it
Yeah.
feels like. So I'm not sure it's a 200-year event anymore. There's probably $10 to $15 million on the line with this decision, so I would think that there could be they could make a strong argument for the utilities to put some money into this, probably make it very economically sound from their perspective, without a whole lot of extra cost, if any, if they lobby hard enough on this, which they've done a very good job of in the past, and I know there's some other projects coming up. I guess I would just say, I hope that, you, and I know you're looking at this right now, understand that we're gonna be looking at this if there is another high water event. We don't wanna do this wrong.
Well, right, and I agree with you, Jason, but no matter what we do, doesn't necessarily mean any water not going over the dike.
And I don't
Correct?
think we're not done here yet
Correct,
either.
Mike?
Yeah, here's the plan, is that what we're talking about doing now, and putting it right back where it is, doesn't mean you're done with Oak Street, but it buys you some time to understand what the Corps is gonna do and whether or not you got another option that's gonna make sense, so. You're certainly not done, because if we're gonna put this back and say, yeah, we're gonna leave the street here flood 2 feet deep, I mean, not a good answer.
Question, on the options that you have listed, you have an upstream flood elevation number listed. Is that the elevation of what the water would have been in that last event?
Yeah, that's the water elevation under each of those scenarios.
So the smaller the number, the more
We
effective
lower,
that option
yeah,
is.
exactly. So we don't really, none of these things make much of an impact on the upstream side.
Okay, so the most effective option would be option 4.
Right.
It creates, that's the lower number, meaning the water
Right.
topped out at a lower elevation.
Yeah. Now,
And-
normally,
and if that-
normally that would really be important, and for the people that live upstream, that's really important, okay? But I guess what this reminds you about is that the more important number is what happens right downstream here, not upstream. Okay, so, I'm not making a dent on what's happening upstream at all, but really what we gotta worry about is right downstream is a bigger problem. And what we're doing up here isn't doing anything to that. That downstream is still gonna be the problem. And the only way I can fix that right now, the culverts don't make any difference. What we do in the road doesn't make any difference. It's at the levees, the only thing that make a difference right now.
And I guess I'll ask one more follow-up on that. So are you telling me that, because what I heard from my witness accounts is, and I'm not sure if this is true, but Steve Horton was one.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to talk to Mr. Jensen here about this as well. I didn't know if he saw that. But the timing of it was, while the water was rushing through and the water level was going up, it eventually overtopped the dike. Once it broke through Oak Street, it lowered down and no longer was overtopping the dike.
Yep,
So how do you explain that?
because there's no road there.
So how do you
Now you gotta
explain
make,
that
it's
that's
just like the
not-
bridge.
But what you're
Yeah.
telling me is that that does not affect the
Oh, no.
downstream model, right?
No, but here, look at it this way. When that washed out, now you had a big hole over here.
That's what I'm asking. I
Yeah.
mean, if it's,
So when it washed out, now there was enough room for water to
That's
go
what I
through.
so do any of these models calculate the downstream effect that you were talking
Yeah.
about with the levee? And that's where it's not recorded on these options, right?
Right, no, I didn't put it on there.
But it is affected, right?
Not that much, okay, because it's the jump that we get that makes a difference. So what I do with it, if we made an let's put this, you gotta get kind of set.
So if the option 4 upstream flood elevation is 738.1, and you pick a line that's approximately 738.1 on the upstream side, it's that dotted blue line on this chart, that profile would be a good prediction of what option 4's impact would be all throughout. Is that
Right.
fair?
But give me
And
this back
if
one
you follow
second.
that, if you follow that blue dotted line and you compare that elevation to what the current dike is there, you wouldn't have to raise it up much.
No, you don't. We can raise, if we could get that dike up 1.5 feet, it would make a big difference.
So if you did a combination of option 4 plus raise the dike 1.5 feet, in theory, it would have prevented the overtopping in this event.
Right. Let me,
And that's kind of what was brought up, before, of, if we can lower it down a little bit with option 1, and if we get FEMA funding and fix the dike and the riprap, it would help, because they can build that road up to get trucks in there, to help build the dike, so it's really a
this is our
combination of
problem
both
with, this
what
is our
we
problem with
discussed.
the dike a little bit. when you
And that's
think
why
about it.
option 1
You know,
was chosen.
You think about the problem with the dike on the south side, you got the houses right here, and you got the dike like that. As soon as we start raising that dike, you either gotta go out in the yard, taking garages and everything else to be able to do it, or you gotta go out on the dirt side, on the creek side, which I can't do it, or you gotta narrow that top width. So what the plan is let's get enough on top of there So you can still drive down there, but not fill in the water and not fill on the house. That's what we're gonna try to do now. That's the best we can do.
And, do you have widening the channel where Mike was?
Well, that's gonna be depend on money more than anything, you know, because if we're gonna come in, right now we got that the riprap is only down on the bottom on the lower, on Turton Creek on the south side. And so what we wanna do when we come back in here and patch that is work off of here and patch in that riprap down there. So on the other side over here, we got this other bank. And what Mike was talking about is that if we could get out here and cut that back and make more room, that would help us out. You're gonna get easements to do that,
Easements from,
the property owner, because that's private property.
he's on vacation.
So basically, 100 feet of sheet piling would take care of the problem.
If we had sheet piling from the Oak Street Bridge and went down, I think it's 240 feet, it would make a big difference. One thing to kind of keep in with, and sheet piling is a good way to go, but one thing to keep in mind with sheet piling is that, and when you see it somewhere, it doesn't stand up 12 feet high all by itself, okay? It'll stand up basically the depth that you put in the ground, but now I got water on this side over here, so you know I got picture water sitting on that side. Sheet piling doesn't stand up like that. Now when you see sheet piling walls along harbors and everything else, what it is we fill in this side and we tie it back with a dead man to hold it up and stuff. So you can't just take sheet pile and make it stand 12 feet high and then that water on one side. It's not a dam. It doesn't gonna work.
Fill it
Now
in.
you gotta build a different kind of, you gotta build a flood wall instead. So now we gotta come in here and build a wall.
So if you drove that sheet piling 15 feet in the ground and had 4 feet sticking up, it wouldn't work?
Oh, you could do it standing up 4 feet. You're right. That would work. But if I'm gonna try to get rid of the, if we put that out here into the levee, then you could do it. So it's just that much higher. So if you did that and left the whole levee there, and is the fiber optic gone yet?
No.
So we got fiber optic cable running right down through that levee. You know, it was a nice convenient route to put a lot of stuff in at one time. Now it's a problem, because you got electric, you know, you got the electric service down there to deal with and other things, but, yeah, that type of a wall would work.
Which side is the water on that diagram?
Water's on this side, yeah.
Going on.
So it's coming out like this, and now,
Shut off right now.
and it's gotta be in the ground, just like you said.
227,000.
Big strip of sheet piling is like 35 feet.
27, 240 feet.
Right.
Well, this is for Oak Street.
Until the Corps of Engineers comes along and
Marlis, you had a
comes
question?
up with a different plan.
Well, I have a question for the Jensens. For option one, what are your feelings or concerns about going with option one?
I don't think we have any now, then, do we? If that's,
That's fine
The
with us,
riprap
you know,
was
as
our
long as the
concern, but-
riprap is done right, you know, so we can maintain it, or somebody can maintain it at least, you know.
Okay. So you would be satisfied with option one at this point?
Well,
at
it
this
sounds like
point,
that's,
yeah,
Well, I mean, this really affects you, I mean, you're right there, that's why I
Mhm.
probably affects you more than anybody.
If Oak Street were lowered at all, and again, I looked at it and I'm just, this is a rudimentary look at it, but you're probably gonna have to slope your driveway down to match whatever elevation that is.
well, we don't have a driveway anymore, so
Yeah,
that's.
it's about like that.
But
If you made a line there and then this just sloped down to match up to whatever that was, you'd still have your full driveway there, just
Yeah.
sloped up,
Yeah.
which isn't too bad.
Well, that'd be better than
higher, the road higher, yeah.
the road higher.
It'd be
You know, it
interesting to
looks-
find out from the
it-
utility
you know, that
department what
water-
you could lobby for as a city, wouldn't it? I think they'd be in a little bit more than you think.
Well, and the next kicker is we have to,
They're human too.
before we have until the 20th
Yeah.
to apply for funding through the DOT, because they request
Yeah,
for 60
you know,
days.
You gotta apply for the funding. The other thing is that if we're gonna do this job this fall, you gotta bid it,
Right.
build it, and paving, the normal deadline for paving is October 15th, you're not gonna do it by then. We're gonna be doing cold weather paving on here as it is. We can just barely get it done, putting it back the way it is.
How much lower are you talking about there?
Would you consider concreting across where the water's gonna run through?
We could, we just a matter of trying to, the problem with the erosion is not on the surface of the road, it's on both sides, where it kind of scours back. So if we protect the ends of it, what's in the middle doesn't really make a difference. It's not gonna, it doesn't come across the road and scour a hole in the middle of the road.
In the area where you're gonna run the water across the road,
Yeah.
there'll be no curb and gutter on either side?
Well, it really does, it won't, we're still debating if it's a good idea to put the curb and gutter or not, but as far as the flood goes, it won't make any difference. But when it goes over there, it's going over it. But, the idea, Raleigh, is that we could just leave the curb out and just dump the water right over the riprap and not even have any inlets there.
And we wouldn't put the storm sewer back.
Right.
Where's all the water gonna go from up the valley past their place?
You're gonna have to.
We're gonna have a water hole down?
On your side, part of it's gonna have to drain back the way it does. I mean, it's gonna have to drain back to Turton Creek, so you're gonna need, if there's no culvert, no drainage there, at, Oak Street, it's gotta drain back to Turton Creek just like it does. So you fill in that hole and try to get it drained back that way.
He's talking the water from the north, from Fox coming back towards where the hole is,
Okay.
on his side of the street.
Okay. If, we need to get an inlet on that side of, Oak Street and take it back over to the downstream side. You need to get an inlet over there.
There's a lot of water comes down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to get that water back across the way it does now.
So it goes under the bridge.
No, it'll drop off, where it does, right now. So essentially what we're gonna do is take the water and drop it off on this side. That's where you've got storm sewer in there now.
But the current one runs to the creek.
Yeah, but what we're gonna do is that you got that inlet on the upstream side now, and so that's gotta stay and come across the road.
So basically, you only need storm sewer the width of the road.
Yep.
And you'll take that pipe out that goes under Horton's driveway. that runs from
Yeah, we're gonna, you have to
the
reshape.
structure that's standing there by itself
Yeah,
now.
Just reshape all of that, because, we're not on the.
Well, then it'll never backflow from the creek into the street.
Yeah, what the idea is that we don't plan to, on the downstream side, we're not gonna fill in that channel, we're gonna leave it there. And, you got a lot of sand that went downstream of Oak Street, and just leave it there, not go clean up all of the stuff that went downstream. They're, just like now, you reshape that channel, but there'd still be a channel headed downstream of Oak Street, just like there exists today. We just reshape it all and stabilize it, but that channel would stay there. So the water's gonna drain out that way.
If I could make one more suggestion, maybe it might be, I know the mayor's probably thinking the same thing, but if you had a committee for the next 2 business days, let's just say you had an emergency meeting or something, I'd love to have this guy on it, obviously, and came up with a proposal that said, based on the knowledge that you extracted from this meeting and some of the discussions in an interim, and then proposed it to the city council to vote on, you might take out some risk on that vote.
I understand what you're saying, Jason, we can't appoint a committee tonight, because it's not decided on, so we have to have, we're really up against the clock here.
Right. And do you know one? You do know? I know you suggested a couple of things, but I don't think widening that dike or
There's no good answer.
Right.
And we
I'm just
talked
wondering
about this
if
a
it's
week and a half ago, and there's just,
I think
There's
you're
not,
getting
we
close.
struggled with the same questions we're asking today that we did last time, and I appreciate everybody, bringing the comments and questions, because that's what we need to hear.
Right.
What we chose, and why we chose option one, is to maybe lower that road a little bit, not affect the utilities, get it back, armor the road, which would help everybody all the way around. Hopefully, we can get some dollars from FEMA, raise the dike slightly to repair the riprap. That kind of affects both ways, and that's why was chosen option one. We didn't have to affect the utilities. We got to possibly raise the dike a little bit, maybe lower the road a little bit. We're getting the best funding percentage-wise from the DOT, understanding that FEMA's, even 2 weeks ago, wasn't maybe gonna be as accommodating. And that's why option one was chosen.
Could you add in trying to widen that creek on that one area that he had,
Well, we're really not talking about the creek at this point. This is really just Oak Street and fixing Oak Street.
That small area that encroaches on the creek channel immediately downstream from the bridge would appear to be a relatively cheap thing to do that may have a significant impact on the physics of what's going on right there.
And I think that, that's a good suggestion, and what we need to do with that, number one, we need to see if you're gonna get the FEMA money to do the riprap. That's number one. The second thing is, if somebody's gonna talk to that property owner and say, is it okay if we widen channel here 10, 12 feet? Because it's your lot that's going. Right? Somebody's gotta go ask them, because you can't just do it without asking, so.
Horton,
yeah.
Steve Taylor.
But, Mike's right, once you get out there with a backhoe and putting the riprap in, going and doing the work on that side is not a big job.
Had to get a permit
Really,
for
the
that.
combination of just, option one, but tweak that road as low as you can without getting into big dollars. Shaving that bubble off of the north side bank to just to try to get that out of the profile of the bridge itself. And when you go look at it, it's like it encroaches right on that capacity of the bridge and would affect that, I don't know what you called it, but that raising of elevation that, right at that point. And then if you did the unofficial improvement of the dike there, the combination of those three, it looks based on this modeling that you're gonna be right there.
Yeah, I know it.
You know.
I know it. Of course, then I look at that and then I figure, okay, we're talking about a 100-year flood. What the hell is a 100-year flood anymore? And so, spent a lot of time doing models and.
That digging out of that portion of the creek, covered under the permit that we would get for riprapping.
That would be covered by the riprap permit, if we do that. So when we apply for the riprap permit, we just put it on both sides. And, last time around when we did it in 2010, they gave us a general permit to do that. And so we can do it. It's money. One other thing I just point out is, I'm not sure if you're all aware of it or not, but during that same event, underneath the bridge, that south abutment was washed out. Right underneath the whole thing, the water cut out a space about that deep, right underneath the abutment. And fortunately, that bridge is on piling, and so it's actually sitting on piling, the abutment is, but when we first saw it, we didn't know for sure there was piling there, and thought, we're gonna have to shut the whole bridge down here in a minute. And we were lucky to find somebody that remembered that they drove sheet piling in 1979, and piling underneath there. And then we knew the bridge was gonna at least make it for a few days, but the city did an emergency repair, went and filled that all in within a couple days after we found it, so. That scoured right underneath the whole bridge abutment, so could have been exciting.
Just so everyone knows, I'm the one that brought this here.
We appreciate that,
Right. But I sat up there for 12 hours that weekend. That was tough, up at the shop. People throwing their stuff over.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the reason I'm here.
Well, there's nothing wrong with questions and comments and concerns, and that's why we.
But I thought I was gonna get nailed to the cross here the last 8, 10
No,
days, so.
no, and
There's people up there throwing all their belongings in a dumpster, crying.
Right.
what do you do?
Right.
What do you tell them? So,
Yeah, and, you know, we struggle over the same thing, and like I said, a meeting a week and a half ago, we struggle over the same thing. Nobody wants to lose roads, nobody wants anybody to lose any personal property or business property or anything like that. And what was your famous word that you used?
Buffoon?
Buffoon. We don't wanna look like buffoons and fixing it the same way. But if that can get us through, help us, and we fix the dike a little bit, lower the road, does it get us through until we're at the core project, and that's why it was chosen.
So if we lower the road, is Hesh gonna be able to get in and out with his low boy?
Oh, you're right, we don't lower it that much. Now, we're only talking about, you know, we're not gonna lower it much.
And it's over an extended,
I asked him about if the option were to lower that in that manner, if he had any concerns, and he said he did not.
Okay.
Ashley trucks too.
They're fine.
Yeah.
they're fine, it's the big log low boys. That'd be the only concern.
If you get a slope steeper than maybe 6% or something, that
Yeah.
would get to be a concern, but
And you'll lower that road over quite a distance, right?
Well, right now, coming off the bridge, we got 4.2%. Kind of gives you an idea about what we get shoot for. Yeah, I agree about 6.5% about doing.
How big of a span is that road to be lowered?
It's, I think it's 31 feet back to back, so it's not a very wide road either.
But I mean the length.
Oh, the length? What we would,
I don't know if that's been decided yet, right?
no.
It could go significantly, right? You have
Well,
to-
no, you don't, I gotta keep away from utilities, so you take the depth of the utilities and we work around that and say that's the depth I can go and the width I can
No, but the length.
go. Right, same thing.
The length.
You know,
The utilities.
the utilities are gonna follow the existing grade, so.
Oh, and the grade changes.
Right,
You
as
only
it
do
starts to
where you
go up
can-
the hill.
You only do it where you can
Right.
gain.
The lowest point.
Got it.
Is there any other questions, or after much discussion, are we gonna stick with what our decision was previously?
Well, I think we need to add in digging out on the south side or north side.
Right, but that would come out, that would be in the Turton Creek project, not in the Oak Street project, which we can surely do.
So it's basically the consensus that that will work, option one.
Correct.
Until,
The Corps decides.
or the 200 years comes back again. Or, and the Corps of Engineers comes on board here, which would be hopefully sooner the better, but, I would opt for that type of, and keep it as such, as long as everybody's happy.
It's the only way we're gonna get it done this year.
Yeah, get her done.
Any other questions? If not, it's already been moved and seconded, so.
We're all set. We'll get the plans done and get a bid date set, so.
Oh, don't screw it up, Mike.
I know I got you helping me all the way, so don't worry.
Thanks for attending, I'll give you guys a couple minutes to leave, unless you wanna stay. Feel free.
See you guys.
Sorry for the late start again.
You got started late?
Yeah.
We're waiting for you.
Wait for me? Oh, bless your heart.
Some guy couldn't make it back from Rochester.
Oh, that guy too, huh?
Yeah.
So really, we just put it on.
I couldn't get back from.
X-rays were running,
Oh, late.
that's why. I was there at noon and I didn't get an X-ray before.
Really? I was down the cross for
How
my,
happy you think I was?
yeah, I actually got
Any
it.
X-ray tip?
Got it done really quick, so.
All right, what we're gonna do is we're gonna move forward with
Still, an hour to get back.
7A. Possible approval of Class A beer, Class A liquor and cigarette license. I'd open, just wait, I'll open the public hearing.
Sorry.
Is there any public that would like to speak in regards to the Class A and/or cigarette license for the food bank?
That's the Randy's
That's for,
Neighborhood Market.
correct. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. A motion would be in order to
Does
approve.
it say where they're at?
So moved.
It doesn't, the license itself does, I forget, somewhere in Iowa,
Iowa.
I forget the name of the city though.
There's a few outfits. that,
Motion by Fetch, second by Mazak.
Anamosa, Iowa.
Anamosa,
Anamosa, Iowa.
Iowa.
Where the heck is that?
Who made the motion?
Fetch.
Fetch, and second by Mazak.
And can we just make that, pending the background
Yes.
check on the agent?
Yep.
Yes, with my approval.
Yep.
Okay.
Is there any other questions?
Second approval.
Yep.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mazik,
Yes.
Olsted,
Yes.
Slusher,
Yes.
Feltes,
Absolutely.
Fetch.
Yes.
Sorry.
Motion carries. Item 8B, approve mayor to sign Department of Transportation
So moved.
Disaster Damage Aid Petition. Motion by Feltes, second by Fetch. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk will call the roll.
Olsted,
Yes.
Slusher,
Yes.
Fetch.
Yes.
Feltes,
Yeah.
motion, Mazik,
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 8C, appointment of council members to the steering committee for community center and library. We already unofficially
Did that?
appointed, but who were the members again?
Todd.
Todd,
Kevin,
Kevin. He was,
and
and Marlis.
Yeah.
Ian, I would
You're
really
on
like
that,
to, I would really like to withdraw from that committee. I don't think I'm the best person to have on that.
You being in all seriousness?
Yes.
Well, cause it was joking last time, that's why I asked.
Oh, okay.
I think the reason we picked Marla, sorry Marla, but it was because she's on the library board.
Oh,
Yeah, there's
okay.
That
conflict of
is true.
interest.
No, that's a good thing.
Oh, it's a good thing. Yeah, that should be. What about Adriano?
So where are they gonna put it?
This is just council
Ju-
members.
just-
Yeah, this is, we're just.
This is just to,
The committee.
just appoint, formal appointment to the committee.
Okay.
You're okay with that, Marlis?
Well, I guess.
Thank you. You got the names?
Can I offer Adriano?
Well, this is just for the council appointments, and then you go look for
Oh,
other
other one,
community
okay,
members. Yep.
all right.
Isn't he already on that list? I just thought he was.
Yeah, I think.
Is there a motion and a second on that for those three? By Mazak, is there a second? By Fetch?
Good evening, Mr. Johnson.
Howdy, how are you all?
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, clerk will call the roll.
Slusher,
Yes.
Fetch. Feltes,
Yep.
Mazik,
Yes.
Olsted.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 9A, approve bills in the general account in the amount of $156,243.19.
Second.
Motion by Feltes, second by Fetch. There's a couple of additions that Angela would like to add.
We got a bill for $480 from, Mobile Life Solutions, for the, maintenance of the Wi-Fi at the park. We did get a donation from Ashley last year to pay that, but wanted to get approval to pay that bill. We got it and it said due on receipt. The other thing we want approval on, which we haven't paid it yet, but, you guys had approved a $5,800 bid to Teresa Gilbertson to paint Kids Kingdom. And she's going to be finishing that up here before, in all likelihood, before the next council meeting. And we wanna have authorization and approval to get that check cut and given to her.
Is that okay with the motion in a second?
You're right.
Joe? Okay.
So the total would be 162.
Which one don't you wanna pay?
523.19.
Bring back next meeting.
Both of them?
Yeah, should've been done for this meeting already.
I think the one was, we just got, right? And we already have a donation for it.
All right, fine.
The other one, we don't have to pay if the job's not completed.
Job not completed.
That's the painting?
That's the painting.
Pending completion of the job.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we just want approval to pay it. So if they're finished and Eva and Raleigh say it's done by the beginning of next week, she's got subcontractors to pay. So, yeah, we
So
won't
be it.
pay it until.
Thanks, Joe.
So that's 400 plus what?
$480 plus $5,800, which one was donation to pay
Yeah.
for it.
For a
The
total of
480?
162,523.19.
Okay. I'm
Any
sorry,
other questions?
what's the total again?
162,523.
162, okay.
Clerk will call the roll.
Fetch,
Yes.
Feltes,
Yeah.
Mezek,
Yes.
Olsted.
Yes.
Slusher.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 10A, discussion on possible action on operator licenses.
So moved. Pending background.
Motion by Feltes, second by Slusher. Pending background checks. Any questions? Hearing none, clerk will call the roll.
Feltes,
Yep.
Mezek,
Yes.
Olsted,
Yes.
Slusher,
Yes.
Fetch.
Yes.
Motion carries. Approval of agent change for Arcadia Country Club. They're just changing, I believe just changing their listed agent.
Yeah,
We're in there?
Randy did a job back at Ashley.
Yeah, Randy Rogotsky was the listed agent and it is just being changed.
it is gonna be being changed to Eric Sensala. And so we would ask if you would approve that agent change, that it would be pending a background check.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Feltes, second by Fetch. Any questions? Clerk will call the roll.
Mezek,
Yes.
Olsted,
Yes.
Slusher,
Yes.
Fetch,
Yes.
Feltes.
Yeah.
Keep going, future agenda items as long as we're down here. Mr. Slusher,
Nothing.
Mr. Fetch,
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Feltes.
Nope, nothing.
Amazing.
Nothing.
I got something wrong.
Nope, sorry about
Sorry, Bill. So, ever since, last year, we implemented a employee evaluation. And it's also stated in my employee contract, that in the month of September, we would conduct a performance evaluation for me. I think that's valuable, so I'd like to, go into closed session and discuss that next week.
Put it on the agenda, please.
And what I'll do is I'll forward all of you, or email all of you the
Form.
form.
Thank you. Anything else? Charlie?
No.
We'll go back up to item 4C, Common Council Rules and Procedures. This is something that was discussed a couple of months ago.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Feltes, second by Mezak. Questions? Go ahead.
I noticed in the form for procedure for the meeting that was written down for the, in the procedure that you didn't include, future agenda items.
Yeah, it's,
I think we mentioned that before.
yeah, instead it's announcements and
But
meetings.
there's announcements and
Yeah,
meetings
they're
there.
in here.
So.
Really, at any time, future agenda items can be added. They don't have to be added at the meeting. They can be added to myself or to the administrator. It's not just for us. We'd like to kind of see this as a living document where it starts with us and grows, so there can also be changes made.
So we can put that in there? or-
Yep.
I have a question, role of the mayor, number 5, the mayor shall be authority to veto ordinances passed by the council. Is that,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
okay, so that doesn't come back then?
If he vetoes it, we can bring it back on the next agenda and vote it.
Override.
He can't veto it a second time.
Right.
Okay.
Well, so that's the way we can override you, or the mayor.
The mayor. It's not just about me and us.
I know.
The only question I have is, if the council president runs the meeting, cause you're gone, and there's only 4 of us here, does that consider a quorum? And then
That's a good question, Joe.
if there's a tie, what happens?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, does the
Cause it's not listed in here.
yeah,
I see something on that.
Bill, can you ask Terry about that?
that might mean the president doesn't have a vote unless it's a tie.
Yeah.
Perhaps. I
Not
don't
so
know.
sure. I think you always have a vote as a council member.
So it might,
Well, I don't know, that's the question I'm asking, does,
Right.
yeah.
if you're running the meeting, do you have a vote?
Right. Well, I can delay my flight here in a couple weeks. You can run the meeting. You guys can give it a test try
Probably
and see
gonna
what
have to,
happens.
probably gonna have to, aren't you? Probably gonna have to, aren't you? With the weather?
Yeah.
Well, you can't get a flight out of Florida right now.
I'm just going to North Carolina, so.
Same shit.
A float plane? No, that wouldn't work either.
Sitting back of the plane because they never back into a mountain when they're flying over.
They might go like this, crunch.
Oh, Joe.
I have a cousin that's a pilot, and he said, sit in the back.
Sit in the back.
Is there other comments, questions, or do we want? I mean, we can just basically table it, answer those questions, and then bring it back so we know the answer. Joe, is that what you're looking for?
No, I didn't see it in here when I read it,
No, you're right.
so I would, it's my,
Should
I'm just curious.
But should
We'll
be.
pass it and then bring back an answer.
Okay, yeah, and you can do it that way too if you want to.
We can always amend it.
It's just a policy.
Yeah, it's a policy.
Aren't we just looking at it this time and then the next meeting we're gonna talk about it? Or-
No,
We're
we
gonna
already
vote
did
on it?
talk about it.
Oh, doesn't it say here, conflict procedure, okay.
We've already had this for a couple months.
Only? How long we wrote this?
It probably started a couple years ago.
You got on the council, right? You've been asking.
Yeah.
But it took out the thing about wearing a tie and foot coat and all that.
At your request.
Yeah.
We have a couple people that don't wanna serve to begin with, so if we have to make them dress up, what do you think we're gonna find, Doc?
So we can set the example.
You might
now.
lose it, you might lose the guy right next door.
Give me a resignation letter coming real fast.
We'll bring you a tie, we just kinda keep it back.
Is there
Wear
any
ties
other-
for weddings and funerals, that's it.
Is there any other questions?
Motion to adjourn.
No, not yet.
We got
Is there any
to pass
motion on the
this
floor? Clerk will call the roll.
Give me the motion.
Did we get a first and a second?
Oh, yeah, Shelby
Yeah.
said Mazik, that's right. Sorry.
Who did?
Feltus and Mazak.
Oh,
Holsted,
no tie.
Yes.
Slusher,
Yes.
Fetch,
Yes.
Feltus,
Yes.
Mazik.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 12, city council meeting Monday, September 18th is gonna be at 6:30 as compared to 5:30. Hopefully everybody can make it on time.
I won't be here.
Monday night.
I'm sorry, I might be a little.
Repeat that, or the next meeting will be at 6:30?
It's 6:30. I travel that day, I'll be back,
I'm gonna
but I
be.
don't know exactly, I'm supposed to be back by like,
You better hope the Packers don't play that game.
they
They don't.
Marla's already left, don't worry about
They
it.
don't.
Right?
Well, we know who plays the first Monday night game this year, don't we?
Number one,
Yes,
again,
we
thanks
do.
for coming. Thanks for coming, even though I know you guys, a couple of you were late, but
Yeah.
make me a little
I'm glad I
nervous.
got here.
A little nervous.
Blame the X-ray people. I was there at noon and I got done, or got in there at 2:15, so.
And I appreciate you guys waiting for us this time.
We're busy.
I'll
This
entertain
your
a
new
motion.
protege?
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn by Mazak, is there a second?
Don't know
Second.
who this is.
By Fetch.
We're not opposed.
Clerk will call the
No,
roll.
no opposed?
Slusher,
Yes.
Fetch,
Who? Yes?
Feltus,
Yeah.
Mazik,
Yes.
Holsted.
Yes.
We are adjourned. All right, now.